A lot of businesses, small businesses that we work with or see, oftentimes, and we've talked about this a lot in previous podcasts, the owner is the business. And oftentimes the owner is the salesperson, the best salesperson, or the entire sales department. How do you get out of that cycle of having a business that is the sales are owner driven, and transition into having a formalized sales department? We are going to talk about that today. I'd like to welcome you to the KeyHire Small Business Podcast, where we cover the issues that help owners scale their small business. I'm Corey Harlock, creator of KeyHire Solutions, and I'll be your host. Our guest today is Charles Fry. He is the founder and CEO of Code Exitos, where they specialize in turning ideas into fully developed digital products. The name's going to make a bit of sense here in a second. Charles grew up in Ohio. He's a farm boy from Ohio. He said he's been in tech since before the internet was invented. Maybe he knows Al Gore. Didn't Al Gore invent the internet? We'll talk about that. And I have a feeling the name of the company may have come from his wife, because they like to split their time. They've been married forever. They're empty nesters, and they split their time between America and Central America. So lucky for them. Matt, let's bring on Charles.
Hey, Corey.
How you doing, Charles?
I'm great, thanks. It's great to be here and talk to you again. I'm looking forward to the topic. The last time we chatted, we were talking about all of the challenges that small businesses have to grow up to be medium and big businesses. And sales was one of those things. And so it should be a fun day.
Cool. Let me ask the first question. Is your wife from Central America?
She is. My wife's Honduran. Yeah, okay. She is.
Well, I figured Exitos, and you spend your time, and you're sitting there in Honduras right now. So
that's right.
Just, connected the dots. It's one of my gifts, one of my talents.
That's right. You got the dots correct.
Cool. All right. Well, we want to talk about, founder-driven sales and how to get out of that loop. But I always like to throw some definitions around stuff. And when you talk about founder-driven or owner-driven sales, what do you mean by that? What does it mean?
Well, I wish I could remember the person who gave me this little germ of an idea, but it was a long, long time ago, and I was on a board with this guy. I remember that. I was on a statewide board in Ohio, but we didn't have a lot of ongoing interaction. So my apologies for the uncredited thing, but we were talking before a board meeting, and he looked at me and he said, "You know what CEO means, don't you?" I'm like, yeah, I think so, but I can't read your mind.
Yeah.
And he said, "It means cash extraction officer."
Right. Okay.
And I'm like, okay, so that's not how I had that definition in my head. But he went on to talk about something that's very true, that as he was the CEO of a company that he had started, and he'd grown it into a really wonderful mid-market electronics firm. This was in that pre-internet era. He pointed out that to this day, he considered his role as the CEO to be the best and the ultimate salesman for their company. But he had grown a very effective, very professional sales team. And so I was pretty young. I was in my first or second company, and I was intimately familiar with the founder being the sales team, because that's what I was.
Sure.
And over the following decades, as I grew my companies and I had to get out of being the rate limiter of being the only sales guy, I learned a lot, and I learned the wisdom of this poorly uncredited guy. His statement is that as a CEO, you're always going to be the cash extraction officer. That's your job, is to maybe not as a mercenary extract cash from customers, but you have to make sure your business makes good on the sales promise, and you have to do that. Eventually, you have to do that, or if you want to grow beyond doing that, you're only as yourself, you have to put other people in that role to tee
Right.
that work up, and you can come in as a closer or whatever. And I think we'll talk about some variations of that. But
Sure.
that's my definition: CEO, cash extraction officer.
When people start a business, I think they default into sales because they've started that business and they know all the nuance. And it's easier for them to sell it because they have a deeper understanding. On the other side of that, oftentimes you'll get an owner who is real super techy, or their passion lies in the creation of the product, and they're not the best salespeople. And that way they hire their neighbor or they hire their buddy who can go out and sell it for them.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting, some owners love to sell, and then they fall into the trap of, well, no one can sell like me. No one can go out and get any new accounts because they own all the accounts, right? These are some of those pitfalls that we fall into, which is maybe a good segue into the mistakes or the pitfalls of being the best salesperson or the only salesperson in your company. I've certainly seen it where you have an owner who is just so possessive and owns that role to the point where even if you hire people to come in and sell, it's really hard for them.
Yeah. Wow. Boy, there's
There's
probably
a bunch
three
to unpack
episodes
there,
on.
so go
Yeah.
crazy.
There
Yeah,
are probably
great.
3 episodes worth, because one of the
For
things I
sure.
hadn't thought about in prepping for this call, I hadn't really thought about the bad salesman CEO. But let me tell you, in the technology world, we're full of engineers that start
Sure.
companies, and they're not really people
They don't want
peoplers.
to sell. They didn't
They don't
start a
want to
company
sell.
because they want to sell a product. They started because they want to create.
That's right. So I've seen that, and we could talk a little bit about that. One of the In your explanation, you said, yeah, you start the company and you're the tech guy and you want to build that product and be that product, so you hire your buddy to sell. I think the edit I would make there, Corey, is you hire your buddy hoping that he would sell.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's a lot of I've worked with a number of particularly tech engineering and tech founders who will tell you, hey, I'm not a people person. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm no good at it. They're generally much worse than no good at it. Um, but there's a weird pattern that I've
Did
noticed
you just say they're
is,
much worse than no good?
oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I've seen some really like pathological examples. And here's where it gets really weird is, so they hire a salesperson who may or may not be good. That's up for grabs. But here's the worst thing. If you think sales is a sleazebaggy kind of job, a used car salesman kind of job, and you really believe that in your head, like some of these guys I've met over the years have believed, they're never happy with anybody that they hire. And so I've actually done some consulting stints with tech companies and tech founders who want help building out a sales organization. But it starts with the fact that they're so anti-sales as a personal bias. And I'm like, dude, how are you ever going to create a successful, incredible sales team if you inherently hate sales? If you think
Right.
all
Think
salesmen
they're
are
bad people.
liars,
Yeah.
then,
Good
then
point.
your salesmen are going to be liars. Uh, so that's a weird, hopefully, edge case, and something that your listeners don't necessarily ascribe to. Um, but it's a big handoff, because you're right in that you're, as the founder or the CEO, you can respond very naturally to any conversation item that comes up when you're talking to a prospect. It feels natural. And if you have reasonable personal skills, you're not trying to convince them of something. We're not going to make this about sales tactics. But if you're generally representing your company and how you can be helpful to a prospect or a customer, it flows naturally. But if you're hired as an employee to come in and represent a company that you haven't lived with in your head for years, 724, then it takes a lot of practice and somebody's got to train you and it gets kind of lumpy. And so then I know, like, this happened today for me. Today, our head of sales, Jason, and I have worked together for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like brothers. I mean, we finish each other's sentences. I trust and love this guy. But I saw a document he sent out today and it just made me cringe because it's not the way I would have said it.
Right.
Now, it's not really that big of a deal, and I can step back and say, hey, look, he's working for the greater good of the company and all of this other stuff, and so I let it go. But when you're hiring your first employee your first sales employee,
Yes.
and you see something like that go out, I mean, I remember years and years ago, your head explodes. You're like, well, dude, what are you doing? You can't say this stuff. I hate these words. We're not
Right.
going to do this and blah, blah, blah. And they're going, what are you talking about? I'm just trying to win more business for the company.
Right. Yeah.
So it's that initial gap that's really, really hard to cross. It's the chasm to cross.
It's what you're explaining. What keeps coming to my mind is no one will ever understand or know your product as intimately as you. But then the second part of what you talked about is because the way you have sold works, you're trying to clone yourself to get people to do it the way you do it. But it's that old adage, and I've used this example before. When someone goes to do a job, so say you hire someone and ask them to sell, and you say, here are your quarterly targets. And they're beating their quarterly targets by 10%. And you go on a sales call, you go on a ride along with them, and they go into a meeting, and they're using their approach with the person, and the person's ready to buy, and then you walk out and you say, hey, you did that all wrong. Here's how you should do it. And you tell them the way you would do it. It doesn't mean they're doing it wrong. It means they're doing it differently. But the end result is 10% better than the goals you gave them. It's not wrong at all, right? And so I think we get hung up on one of the lessons I learned really early on, and I probably took it too much to heart, was if you're going to write a sales letter or a marketing message to someone and it doesn't make you a little uncomfortable to send, it's probably too vanilla and not impactful at all.
Yeah.
Right. And so, man, I took that to heart, and I used to try to be like as blunt and whatever as I could. Probably didn't work to my advantage in the early days. But when you bring someone on and you've been selling a certain way, and they take this kind of maybe more direct or more of a, maybe they have some sales training and they're taking a really direct approach, and it makes the owner uncomfortable because I'm a relationship seller and, that's not how I do it, but it's working and they're not damaging your reputation. There's this weird, I'm not comfortable with it. I wish you would do it like this. And then they do it your way and their sales drop, and you say, hey, why are your sales down? Well, because you told me to change the way I do things. Yeah. So it's a strange place to be for an owner.
So the things, as I'm listening to you, and maybe for the benefit of the audience, when I look at this situation, I see, I'm going to break it down into a rule of three. I have three distinct eras of moving away from being the only sales guy in my company, from being a founder-led sales, CEO-led sales organization, or really a CEO-only sales organization.
CEO/sales manager.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Why do companies with 5 people have 4 of them are C-level people? And like, you're the chief of nothing.
It's one of my pet peeves too, and I always talk to my clients about it. You should not have C-level people at $10 million.
This episode is not about that. But so the first era is hiring your first professional salesperson. The 0 to 1 is our first one. The second phase is, let's call it the 1 to 5. It could be
Okay.
1 to 10, who cares, but call it 1 to 5. Okay. And then 6 and up or 11 and up or whatever, we're not going to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about this unless you really force me to,
Well, and
because
you're talking about in terms of number of people in the department.
number
Okay.
of salespeople in the
Yeah.
department. Right. Right. So when you cross 5 or 10 salespeople, you get into issues that are more around truly sales management and scaling and some other stuff. We'll save that for another day, maybe. So you've got 0 to 1, and then you have this 1 to a few
Right.
kind of thing. Now, your points about sales style are exactly right. However, I learned the hard way that if I didn't pick my first one to follow the pattern that I wanted the next few or 5 to follow, what you can't have is, you can't have 5 people with 5 styles and
Agreed.
5 approaches,
Agreed.
because then you really just want to jump out of the building, and because Sam's doing okay, but Mary's crashing and burning, and Steve's on fire, but you can't
You
you
never
can't
know
do that.
why, because you're not measuring anyone on the same things.
Yes. So let's go all the way back now from 0 to 1. So 1 becomes very, very important, because he or she needs to be the pattern that you as the founder want to live with, and the pattern that you want other people to follow. Okay.
It's a great point.
So aforementioned uh, colleague, friend, partner of mine, Jason, the reason he was the first person I hired to do sales at Code Exitos after I got the company up and running was because we had prior experience, and I knew that we were kind of cut from the same cloth, you might
Yeah.
say. And I wanted him to help me establish the pattern. So even though I was complaining a bit ago about the cringeworthiness of today's memo that he sent, it's really okay, because that's 1 time out of 100 that I cringe. The other 99 times, he's the pattern, and he's better at this than I am, because he can focus all of his time and attention on it. So as we've added numbers 2, 3, 4, and soon to be 5 to the mix, you've got what on the farm you've got a bell steer. You got the leader to follow. So 0 to 1, your number one, if you're thinking about this and you're listening, number one is, you should be looking for the pattern that you want to replicate. Even if you don't think you're going to replicate it beyond another, I just need a couple sales and I need a break from this myself. Determine what sales style and technique you like and that you would be comfortable with, and then make that the expectation of your new hire.
Right.
And I'm going to stop and see if you have any other questions, because you're great at your questions. But we should probably come back and talk about the difference between sales technique and sales style, because that took me a long time to understand the difference.
It's a good nuance. I'm happy to do that. And as you were talking, I was thinking, I agree with you that first person, hiring that first professional salesperson, is really important, and finding someone who has a style that you're comfortable with is very important. The challenge I think you would need, as most business owners, there's 2 things that popped into my mind, because I'm a talent guy.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you like them and you're biased by, oh, you remind me of me when I was a young guy. Let's do this. You still need to. The second thing is, watch out for that like me bias, but also you need to have a process in place that will vet out what that style is, beyond going for lunch, having them throw a few buzz terms at you, thinking, man, you remind me a lot of, I was just like you and I was young, I'm going to give you a shot. We really haven't put them through a proper process. The biggest mistake small business owners make when they hire is they don't have a formalized process, and they hire for current needs, right? So
Yeah.
You got to look at those things and say, where are they coming from? They can be a great person, and they could tell you they're great at sales, but they might not be. So I love the advice, because that first person, you want to hire someone to lead your sales department. If you're just built a business, who knows more about sales and building a sales process and understanding the sales cycle, you want them to know more about that stuff than you do, which takes a bit of humility from a founder, business owner, to say, man, I've been doing the best I can. It seems to be working, but they can take what you've built and even formalize it. So like you said, when you bring people in, instead of having the wild, wild west where you have 5 people doing what they think works, you have a process where this is how we do it. This is what we know works.
Yeah, but let me be devil's advocate on that facet of what you're bringing up. By the way, engaging someone like you to help me find that first salesperson is money really well spent, because
Agreed. Yeah.
you're gonna psychoanalyze me as your client, and you're gonna say, hey, I could see you better than you see you. I'm all on for that. I mean, I'm
Right.
100% there. However, another trap that I see people do, and again, this happens a lot in tech. So things are booming. We've got a cycle, and things are booming, and now I'm a tech bro, and my company's blowing up, and I don't need to sell anymore. And so I've got some money to spend. I can hire, I can spend some money on somebody that's credible. And what I do is I go out and I hire a sales manager. Okay. Well, what I really want is a salesperson, not a sales manager. I
Right.
don't need a manager of a staff of none,
Correct.
and I don't need a manager of a staff of me. And so, Corey, I know you know this because you find people like this, but a sales manager who wants to talk about our process and our pipeline and our sales stages, and I've got to get our CRM build and all this other stuff, they're going to stay really busy, not selling anything.
Yep.
They're going to
Agreed.
take your check. And so as a CEO, you're like, hey, Corey, dude, I hired you to sell.
Yeah.
What have you been working on? Well, I'm trying to think if we have a 5 or a 6-stage sales funnel.
Correct. Agreed.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to go, I don't even know what a sales funnel is, Corey. And by the way, is anybody going to pay us for this? No,
Right.
because I want you to bring money in the door, not
Yeah.
develop a process that I don't need yet. So the first salesperson, remember, I said they should be the pattern. This is my opinion. They should be the pattern of the next 5 salespeople you want, not the sales manager. The CEO and the founder can continue to be the sales manager. Now, here's
Okay.
a great thing about sales process. If you go into a bookstore, I think the biggest section of books in the bookstore is how to lose weight. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's hundreds of books that basically say, eat less, exercise more.
Correct. Agreed.
Yeah, but it's a short book, and you can't fill up a whole department in the bookstore. The
Right.
second largest one is how to sell stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Starting with this book. You should buy this book because I'm a salesman. But the tongue-in-cheek stuff aside, there are some really good sales processes out there that you can get in book form. Challenger sale, spin selling, you should go look. It just takes a little bit of research. And as a founder, you should look at those as a process cookbook that makes sense. You don't have to do it yourself, but you're like, you know what? I really like the Challenger sale. And I want my sales team that feels, when I read this book, it feels like kind of how I
It,
envision myself acting.
yeah.
And so I picked this
It
one.
fits me, right? It doesn't make me
It,
uncomfortable. I like it.
it
It suits
fits
my
me.
personality. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm going to hire you to be my first sales guy. And I'm saying, Corey, I want to hire you to be my first sales guy. And by the way, here's a book called The Challenger Sale. And I want to know that you're going to follow this book. because this is what we're going to talk about. Because I can't be on every sales call and I can't go to every meeting and I can't understand all that stuff. But you're going to read this book. Now, hopefully, you're going to go, oh man, I love that book. I've been following that book for the last 5 years. Now I know that you and I are at least in the same headspace.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I really think we ought to invent, I don't know, Miller Hyman. I'll pick something from 100 years ago. I want to be a Miller Hyman guy. There's nothing wrong with that, except if I don't know it, it feels like you're speaking English and I'm speaking Spanish or vice versa.
Right.
So rely on the pre-baked stuff and say, that's it. We're going to follow this methodology. Now we've got that out of the way. We don't have to talk about anything except who you're going to go sell to this week.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I think the nuance between what we were potentially saying is if you wanted to continue on as a sales manager, as the owner, but if you're one of those owner who doesn't like sales, you want a salesperson, but you also want to, it'd be weird to bring in a sales guy and they say, now we're going to hire your boss. You've done such a great job. We need to expand. I'm going to hire your boss. Right. If you were one of those guys in the background who didn't enjoy sales.
In my world, in industry, you don't need a sales manager until you have somewhere between 8 and 10 salespeople. All right. And so you might, now a lot's changed in the world. There are people who do fractional sales management, and that might be a good spend because you're getting your first couple of people up. The most influential business mentor I've had in my life was my uncle Paul, God rest his soul. And he was just a wonderful story. Millionaire next door. He started a trucking company in the 1930s. It's a fantastic guy. And he told me, he said, your salesmen should all have wooden chairs that aren't very comfortable. So I'm like, why? He's like, because they don't make any money sitting in the office. You want them out talking to customers. Don't give them a nice office. It's a little bit like sales management. You don't want them doing a lot of sales management
stuff. You want to play and coach, right? Player coach, especially when you're small.
I think when you're small, you want a player.
For sure.
You're still going to be the coach. I want somebody that's going to produce.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of talking about what I think for you and I are subtle differences, but I think that the listeners, if they want to take like actionable items out of this, they need to decide, do I want a player coach? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
There's a path for that. Or do I just want a producer?
Right.
And if I need a producer, I don't want to do any coaching.
Correct. Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah. It just depends how comfortable you are doing that. And then you mentioned the fractional piece, which is a great in-between thing, who can do that kind of administrative stuff, but they're not, your salespeople aren't in their wooden chairs. It's funny when you said that, I thought of McDonald's. When they designed McDonald's, those seats are only designed to be comfortable for 20 minutes.
That's why you didn't know that.
Yeah, you never see people hanging out at McDonald's for hours. It's chairs feel uncomfortable. That's by design.
Literally by design.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm gonna borrow that. So you have this 0 to 1, and you get one in, and now we'll spend just a few minutes talking about the 1 to many. If you follow my thesis of your first one should be the pattern, then you don't want number 2 to have a different approach and a different style. And you say, hey, Jason's my guy, and I want you to spend a lot of time with Jason before you take on the job, because I want you to pattern off of him. And I really screwed up some of my organizations early on because I thought, I'm just going to over-index on people that are producers, and I don't care that their styles and approaches are different, and I'll iron that out later. You don't iron it out, because for salespeople, it's kind of their personality. And so if you end up with 5 people who have 5 different playbooks and 5 different styles, you're never going to rationalize that down into the company thing. And I screwed that up a couple times, and it was really expensive.
And I think everyone has, and you end up with, it's a Simon Sinek term, but the high performing assholes that now they're embedded in your company. They're making you a lot of money, but they're causing turmoil and chaos everywhere. People are pissed off and unhappy, and you have to reconcile. do I fire them and lose that revenue, or do I continue to let the chaos go and try to fight the fires and keep the revenue rolling in?
Well, I- I'm sure that I can think of times where I've had that debate in my own head. With enough time in retrospective, you're going to lose them anyhow. So it's really not a matter of if. Just get it done. I mean,
Yeah.
that's more of a business ethics question. But we have a pretty strict, pretty clear. I guess it's strict, but a clear no assholes principle in the company. Life's too short. And I mean, if somebody's an odd fit, we don't necessarily have to ascribe, judgment like I just did with that term, but they're probably not happy being part of the organization either. And so just get it done. Life's too short.
Yeah.
I'm not out to wreck anybody's life at this point.
Yeah.
But
You've been, it's not your first rodeo. These guys that are doing this the first time and they have that person who's there, you can lose sleep over that decision.
look, I still lose sleep over this sometimes, but the thing that triggered in my head there is that part of why sales is so inflammatory for founders is that I think we even know instinctively that even mediocre salespeople, but especially good salespeople, they're getting more public face time than you probably are as the boss. I mean, you're stuck in the office late at night, looking at cash flow statements and manufacturing, orders and all this other stuff. And man, they're out there ripping it up, having 5 lunches a week on your tab and meeting all kinds of people in the
Playing golf.
community and
Yeah.
playing golf. And you're like, wait a minute.
Going to trade shows.
Well, you're having more fun than I am at this. And it's hard not to find yourself becoming, jealous, I guess, or envious of that because, that's I think what we would love to be the one going to the trade show and being on the golf course and all that kind of stuff as the founders. It's sort of what we were supposed to be doing. And that gets back to my mentor's comment about being a cash extraction officer. And what he talked about is important customers are always going to want to know who's running the show. And so the way we deal with it at Code Exitos is our sales team uses me as the closer. Not that I'm remarkable at closing the deal, but I think of it more like a baseball analogy. I don't know if they need me to pitch the final 3 innings or the final batter, but they need to know when to bring me in to say, hey, close this deal for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's how we implement the cash extraction officer. And you can't do that if you don't have a lot of confidence that all of the pitches going up to that point were, I think probably every baseball closer, once in a while you hear about this, they're great mid relievers or closers. And they're like, yeah, I want to be a starting pitcher.
Right.
I don't know enough about baseball and pitching to know what the difference between it is, but those are really specialized skills. And I think founders work best as middle inning and late inning pitchers to close the deals. So again, tactically, maybe the way you get your first person going is you say, hey, I want you to qualify these leads. I want you to set up these meetings. I want you to you go to the first meeting and qualify whether or not this is worth my time. But then I'm going to go on the next meeting with you. I'm going to go to lunch with you. You're going to set all that stuff up. And that buddy time and that pairing will help you get that mind meld going that you want so that when, Corey, if you're out there selling for me, or I should probably, I'm the guest, I'm out there selling for you, you should be hearing enough.
I don't get offended about that stuff. You're all right.
You're hearing enough you're having enough interaction, live fire interaction with me that you're like, yeah, once in a while I'll cringe, but Biddy gets it right more times than not.
Yeah.
So,
and they also learn how to, they will keep the baseball analogies rolling, but they understand how to tee it up for you. And you go on enough of those late inning closer calls, and then you debrief on the way back. Okay, next time, make sure they know about this and they know about that. And now you're teaching them how to really put the ball on a tee for you. So when you walk in, you can be confident what's already been discussed and what's not, and what questions they might have.
So I'm smiling just because a couple little like sales superstitions came to mind when I was listening to you. One thing that Jason will know both of these if anyone gets a hold of him and asks him. The first thing is we never talked when we did these buddy calls. We never talked about the call until we were in the car and doors were closed. Now we don't do a lot of car ride sales anymore,
Right.
but I learned a long time ago, again from a mentor, that we've all done it. We've been on these sales calls. We've gone in and made the presentation, and we just think we crushed it. We're all excited, and we want to talk about how cool we were and how we know this work's coming in. So we're in the elevator talking to one another about how that VP is just totally digging what we're saying and everything else. And we're not looking around us. And this guy said, your competitors might be going in to do a presentation right after you. They could be in the elevator with you. And by golly, it happened one time. And I'm like, I can't believe that just happened. Now, I didn't say anything because I recognized my competitor was in the room. And I'm like, wow, I'm not the only horse in the race.
Right.
So we adopted this. It's bad luck. You don't talk about it. The other thing is we use the expression getting ink. And we meant literally with the pen, the contract signed. You don't celebrate it until it's signed. And even then, sometimes, unfortunately, it's not a time for celebration. But we've reduced that down to ink. And to this day, that's our shorthand for like, hey, if the deal's not closed and done and the contract signed, it's not a sale yet.
Yeah.
And so, in the sales world, you have to live in these sort of black and whites. And so, just a couple tidbits because that's the other thing that founders get into when they hire their first salesperson is that person's really good at communicating and shaping opinion and everything else. And so, you're going to say, hey, Charles, did you sell anything today? Oh, well, I had this great meeting with this guy and blah, blah, blah. I know I didn't ask if you had any great meetings. I asked if you sold anything today. Did we sell any?
Got a lot in the pipeline.
Lots in the pipeline. A couple other techniques. Rule here at Code Exitos and all my sales teams for a long time is we always start the meeting with a celebration item. Anybody can celebrate an item. Now, the reason is sales is really, really hard. So if you're one of those cynical CEOs that says, like, you will never hear me say, oh, one of my account execs got lucky with this deal. They don't get lucky. It's a beat down. If you haven't done it, you go do it for a year and you'll find how much abuse your ego takes. So we always want to start by celebrating, but you can only celebrate something once. And I picked this up. I took over a sales team years ago, and I got on the first pipeline call, and the lead guy, he's like, "Oh man, celebration. I had coffee with his CIO at big Fortune 500 company," and I'm like, and I'm just in listening mode. I'm like, "Wow, that's impressive." And meeting goes on. A week later, we're on the pipeline call. Any celebration items? And Andy's like, yeah. He goes, I had coffee with his CIO, and he repeats the story. And everybody's like, oh, that's great. That's great. And pretty soon I'm like, pattern recognition kicks in, and I'm like, wait a minute. We've celebrated this 3 weeks in a row, and it's not a sale. He bought the guy coffee and expensed it. So it's not a celebration item. So we allow that celebration because maybe it's a breakthrough that the guy actually met you for coffee. But once you've celebrated it, it's done and you can't bring it up again. So
yeah, it's good. Yeah. So let's move into some, I think you've thrown out a lot of good information, but if you had to distill it down to 3 or 5 pieces of, advice to give to a business owner who's feeling like, yeah, I'm the sales department. I'd love to get some help. I'd love to go out and get that producer. What's the best advice you could give them?
First thing is determine whether it's you or not, determine what kind of selling approach and style you want your company to be represented by, and go to the bookstore, skip over the diet section, go to the sales section and read about sales methods until you find one that you go, I like this. All right. And you'll spend 25 or 35 bucks buying the book, but you've got kind of sales in a nutshell.
Right.
I haven't looked. You could do some research online. There are probably 5 or 6 common for whatever industry you're in. Just find one, and that's it. So now you have your approach. Second thing is get someone who's dispassionate about your business. Someone like you, Corey, that's in the HR world and knows how to study people and build a profile for who you need for that salesperson and what exactly you want them to do. If you want them to fill the order book up and all you care about is transactional movement, then be really specific about it. Don't pull any punches. If you're going to make a multi-year investment over and you say, hey, I'm embarking on hiring a sales team of 5 and I need my first person who will eventually be the sales manager, then that's got to go in the job description. And guys like you are really good at helping clearly extract and define that information. The third thing is when you're interviewing people to take that, just have really blunt conversations. Don't BS around. Salespeople, if they're any good, they're used to having direct conversations. It's not their default mode because you're looking for nuance and opportunity and that kind of stuff. But salespeople get told no more than they get told yes. So you've got to have a really direct working relationship, even with the people that you hire and you love. So I would say define your model, get some outside advisory help so you're not falling in love with somebody who's promising you stuff that may or may not happen. Interview them in all candor. And then the fourth thing, I'm not going to get to 5, but the fourth thing I would say is establish your timeline and budget for success. Because sales is not a coin operated thing, meaning that
Right.
I can't guarantee that in X number of days the pipeline's booming and the sales are flowing in. There's some ramp time. Different people have different ramp times. You have to decide before you start what's your pain tolerance. And
Right.
if you say, look, I need this level of sales within 6 months, write it down, give it to the person that you're giving that responsibility to, stick it on the wall if you need to, but that's got to be the rule of the road because otherwise you'll find yourself rationalizing
Right.
lack of performance.
And I have
There
to
you
think
go.
point number 4 has to be based on your sales cycle. If
Yeah,
you're selling widgets and people are calling and you're saying, how many you need? Yep, I'll ship them out today. That should be pretty quick. But if you're selling a complex or a custom built item or something and your sales cycle is 9 months, you can't make it 6 months.
that's right. Now, if you're hiring your first salesperson, you may have no idea what your sales cycle is. So
Correct.
here's my
That's a good
here's my
point.
fifth. Here's my fifth.
All right, we
The
got there,
four,
Charles. You got to 5.
yep. All right, we got 5. The fifth one is buy a reasonably credible CRM system before the first person starts and require that all the data goes in there. All
Agreed.
right. So we use HubSpot. HubSpot's cheap and easy. It's super efficient. It's effective. And the rule is if the data's not in HubSpot, it didn't happen.
Yep.
And so you need to have, there are plenty of ways to get data-driven sales metrics figured out, but you got to have the data. So if it's your first salesperson, you don't really know what your sales cycle is, have that outside advisor helping you out and saying, well, I think in your industry, it feels like it's a 9-month sales cycle. You probably ought to give somebody a year's runway. So you're like, okay, man, I got to hire somebody for 150 grand a year plus commission, and it's a year, and you've got to commit.
Yep.
You can't get 3 months into it and go, oh, you know what? Charles sucks as a salesman. I want to fire him and hire another one, because then you're just burning money and burning people.
It's a good point.
So that collection of stuff, that's really that's the beginning playbook.
Yeah, man. I think those are all
Be
great points.
patient and be direct. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Charles, if people are listening here and they want to reach out and talk to you more or learn more about what you do, how can we get in touch with you?
Well, you guys have my contact information. I'm on LinkedIn, the company website. If you send me a LinkedIn message, say, "Hey, I heard you on Corey's show. I want to talk to you about sales." I'm not a professional sales manager or anything else. I know a little bit about it. I've had a great group of people around me over a number of companies in this industry that I'm in. If you call me up and you say you have a chain of roofing companies, I might not know 2 cents worth of any advice to give you about how to sell that kind of service. But I'm happy to hear from anybody that wants to reach out, connect on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and we'll take it from there.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks. This has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it. Lots of good information.
Thank you.
Enjoy your time in Honduras. Well, there he is, Charles Fry. That was great. Some really good information. So happy he was able to make some time for us. I'd also like to thank you for tuning into the KeyHire Small Business Podcast. If you got value out of today's episode and you want to keep up to date on our content, subscribe. Hit the subscribe button or share this with a business owner in need. If you know a business owner who is struggling with sales or on that turnstile of salespeople and they need to hear this episode, forward it to them, send them the link, help us out. We're here to help small business owners, and you can help us continue to produce great content by sharing the information. If you prefer to listen to your podcast, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, whatever platform you're on. Just search up the KeyHire Small Business Podcast. I'd like to thank you for listening. I'm Corey Harlock, and until next time, stop grinding, start growing.